Assess endpoint security capabilities. Lesson Introduction. Endpoint security aims to secure every endpoint connected to a network, from laptops to smartphones, tablets, and other IoT devices, to prevent them from being an attack entry point. Effective endpoint security has become increasingly important as the number and types of devices connected to networks continue to expand. For traditional computing devices such as desktops and laptops, hardening practices typically ensure operating systems and all installed applications are regularly updated. User access is limited. Firewalls and antivirus software are enabled and updated, and in-use software, services, and ports are disabled or removed to minimize potential attack vectors. Security strategies may include additional considerations for mobile devices, such as smartphones and tablets. While keeping the operating system and applications updated is still crucial, other practices such as disabling unnecessary features, like Bluetooth and NFC when not in use, limiting app permissions, and avoiding unsecured Wi-Fi networks become increasingly important. Installing trusted security apps, enabling device encryption, and enforcing screen locks are essential considerations. Mobile Device Management, MDM, solutions help manage and control security features across various mobile devices. Hardening embedded systems and IoT devices focuses on physical security and firmware integrity, as these systems often control physical processes or are located in unsecured environments. Applying regular firmware updates, employing secure boot processes to maintain firmware integrity, and ensuring communications are encrypted are common practices. Since these systems have limited computational capabilities, they require lightweight but robust security solutions. Lesson objectives. In this lesson, you will do the following. Explore the importance of endpoint hardening. Understand hardening techniques. Explore unique challenges related to hardening embedded devices. Learn about hardening mobile devices. Explain the importance of mobile device management. Rate your confidence. Exam objectives covered. 2.5 Explain the purpose of mitigation techniques used to secure the enterprise. 4.1 Given a scenario, apply common security techniques to computing resources. 4.5 Given a scenario, modify enterprise capabilities to enhance security. Device hardening describes the practice of changing configurations to secure systems from threats by reducing the vulnerabilities attributed to default configurations. Standard techniques include regular update processes, secure password policies, the principle of least privilege, and disabling or removing unnecessary software, services, and features to reduce a device's attack surface. Additionally, data encryption and network-level hardening strategies, such as implementing firewalls and intrusion detection systems, can help security analysts monitor and maintain secure configurations. Regular security audits and vulnerability assessments ensure ongoing system security and quick responses to emerging threats. Endpoint hardening. Operating system security. Operating system security encompasses many practices that aim to protect against unauthorized access, data breaches, malware infections, and other security threats. There are many considerations and requirements when securing an operating system because operating systems are complicated and powerful software products operating at the core of all information systems. Many security concepts apply to operating system security, including access controls, authentication mechanisms, secure configurations, application security, secure coding, patch management, endpoint protection, user awareness training, and monitoring. Hardening describes changing an operating system or application to make it operate securely. The need for hardening must be balanced against functional requirements and usability because hardening can often negatively impact how applications work or interoperate. Best practice baselines play a critical role in device hardening by providing a standard set of guidelines or checklists for configuring devices securely. These baselines, often developed by cybersecurity experts or organizations, offer a starting point for systems administrators to ensure that devices are configured according to industry security standards. Many of the requirements can be applied automatically via a configuration baseline template. The essential principle is of least functionality, that a system should run only the protocols and services required by legitimate users and no more. This reduces the potential attack surface. Interfaces provide a connection to the network. Some machines may have more than one interface. For example, there may be wired and wireless interfaces or a modem interface. Some machines may come with a management network interface card. If any of these interfaces are not required, they should be explicitly disabled rather than simply left unused. Services provide a library of functions for different types of applications. Some services support local features of the OS and installed applications. Other services support remote connections from clients to server applications. Unused services should be disabled. Application service ports allow client software to connect to applications over a network. These should be disabled or blocked at a firewall if remote access is not required. Be aware that a server might be configured with a non-standard port. For example, an HTTP server might be configured to use 8080 rather than 80. Conversely, malware may try to send non-standard data over an open port. An intrusion detection system should detect network data that does not conform to the expected protocol format. Persistent storage holds user data generated by applications, plus cached credentials. Disk encryption is essential to data security. Self-encrypting drives can be used so that all data at rest is always stored securely. It is also important to establish a maintenance cycle for each device and keep up to date with new security threats and responses for the particular software products that you are running. Workstations. Workstations operate at the front line of an organization's activities and present unique concerns regarding endpoint hardening compared to other devices. Due to the varied tasks and numerous applications associated with workstation use, they generally have a large attack surface. Hardening practices to minimize this attack surface include removing unnecessary software, limiting administrative privileges, strictly managing application installations and updates, and many other changes. Furthermore, since employees operate workstations, user-focused security strategies are essential, including regular training and awareness activities to educate users about threats such as phishing and promoting secure behaviors such as strong password practices, responsible internet use, and careful handling of sensitive data, among other practices. Additionally, configuring workstation settings for increased security, like automatic updates, screen locks, firewalls, endpoint protection, intrusion detection and prevention, increased logging, encryption, monitoring, and many other protections are essential. Also, the need to secure peripheral devices like USB ports is particularly critical for workstations due to their diverse use and high exposure. It is often achieved using features of endpoint protection software and the implementation of strict device control policies. Lastly, given the various roles and responsibilities assigned to different workstations, segmentation is crucial to restrict communications and limit the potential for malware or attackers to propagate across the network. Baseline configuration and registry settings. It is typical to have separate configuration baselines for desktop clients, file and print servers, domain name system, DNS, servers, application servers, directory services servers, and other types of systems. In Windows, configuration settings are stored in the registry. On a Windows domain network, each domain joined computer will receive policy settings from one or more group policy objects, GPOs. These policy settings are applied to the registry each time a computer boots. Where hosts are centrally managed and running only authorized apps and services, there should be relatively little reason for security-relevant registry values to change. Rights to modify the registry should only be issued to user and service accounts on a least privilege basis. A host-based intrusion detection system can be configured to alert suspicious registry events. Baseline deviation reporting means testing the actual configuration of hosts to ensure that their configuration settings match the baseline template. On Windows networks, the Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer, MBSA, tool was popularly used to validate the security configuration. MBSA and other Microsoft reporting tools have now been replaced by the Security Compliance Toolkit, Docs.
Let's take a look at some general strategies for hardening an operating system. Here we are on a domain controller running Windows Server. Let's go to Tools and go to Active Directory Users and Computers. There are a lot of options here for locking things down. The default user is the administrative user, and that's a very well-known account. It's built into the system, so a lot of people understand what it is and what it does. One thing you might consider doing is renaming the account in Properties, or you could create a new account for the administrator. Be aware that the administrator account has many groups assigned to it, such as domain admins. The groups are required for group policy management. By default, a general administrator doesn't have access to group policy management. For example, we have this account right here. We can go to Properties, Member of, and then Add. Type Administrators and hit OK. We've just added this as an administrative user. If this is the only administrator for the system, please be sure to add additional groups such as domain admins. Then you can disable the administrative account and just use this account, which won't be well known to people outside of your system. If you do disable the administrative account, be aware that it's the original admin account, and it's the only one that you can't lock with account lockout. So be careful about disabling it. You don't want to get locked out of your system or your server. You'll also want to change passwords. Windows Server requires you to enter a complex password right after you've installed the operating system. You'll need to change any default account names and passwords and use complex passwords. To change your password, you just right-click on the account and go to Reset Password. That's relatively simple. You'll also notice that there are a lot of built-in groups in Active Directory. This container here on the left contains all of the built-in groups that come on your server by default. These groups can help you control what users can access and what they can do. For example, when you add somebody to the Backup Operators group, that user has the power to back up and restore files. Let's go ahead and go to our Group Policy and Group Policy Manager. Go to Tools, and then we'll go to Group Policy Management. We're going to go to Domain Controllers and the Domain Controller Default Policy. Right-click, Edit. These are all the group policies that affect our domain controller. Over here, under Computer Configuration, we're going to go to Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings. You can see settings that you've enabled to lock down the domain controller behavior. We're going to take a look under Security Settings. We're going to look at Local Policies, specifically User Rights Management. Under here, on the right-hand side, we're going to go to Backup Files and Directories, and you can see that right here. This is basically the built-in groups that can back up files and do backups in the directories. We have administrators, backup operators, and server operators. We can add users to this group if we want to. Let's also go down to Restore Files and Directories. Here are the same groups. They all have that same access. All three of these, administrators, backup operators, and server operators, have the ability to back up and restore files on your system. That's something to be aware of. If I give someone backup operator rights, they'll be able to restore and back up any files on the system. On the left side, there are also security options. For security options, we don't care who's logged on. They affect everyone. Scroll down to Interactive Logon. Let's do Interactive Logon. Don't require Control-Alt-Delete right here. This option actually reduces your security posture because the malware can take advantage of the fact that the Control-Alt-Delete box isn't there. Having Control-Alt-Delete can prevent some malware. If this is enabled, it could open up your system to some problems, but you can only set this across the board for every user. You can't define which user can do this. This setting applies to everyone. In this case, we don't want to do this. We're going to hit Cancel. Notice that it didn't ask us which user or which group to apply this to, since it affects everyone. Other hardening strategies include installing only required software on the systems. With Windows Server, we have the concept of roles. Here we're going to go to Manage. This is a little different from older versions of Microsoft Server. Server Manager is quite a bit different as well. Here, we're going to go to Add Roles and Features. We can also see Remove Roles and Features. It has a wizard to get you started. We'll just click through a few. This is very different from older versions of Windows Server, but you can do role-based or feature-based installation or remote desktop service installation. We're just going to do role-based. Select the server you want it to be on. I'm going to select my server. You can see the server roles that you can add. If we go on one more, you can see features. Windows Server only installs binaries for any service that you want to run on the server. This helps reduce the attack surface. You won't have a bunch of programs open by default. You actually have to go in, enable them, and turn them on. One major difference between older servers and newer servers is that the security configuration wizard has been completely removed, so features are secured by default. You should use Group Policy Manager, our Microsoft Security Compliance Manager, to control specific security settings. We can also go to our Services on Server Manager by selecting Tools and then Services. It's a good practice to disable or turn off at least the startup behavior of any services that you're not requiring on this particular machine. Microsoft will start up services related to the roles you've installed, but often there may be extra services that aren't required for the operation of your system. You can go through and look at all the services that are started automatically. For example, there's a service called SSDP that we're going to look at. SSDP Discovery is a universal plug-and-play type of hardware on your system. It's universal plug-and-play for network devices. At one time, there were some flaws in it, and it's automatically disabled by default. You want to be careful not to disable a service that may be critical. Always do your research first. That's it for this demo. In this demo, we discuss some strategies that you can use to harden your Windows Server operating system.
Endpoint protection. The purpose of device hardening is to enhance a system's security by minimizing the potential vulnerabilities a malicious entity could exploit. This is achieved by configuring network and system settings to reduce their attack surface. Segmentation. Segmentation is crucial to securing an enterprise environment because it reduces the potential impact of a cybersecurity incident by isolating systems and limiting the spread of an attack or malware infection. In a segmented network, systems are divided into separate segments or subnets, each with distinct security controls and access permissions. This type of segmentation significantly complicates an attacker's work, giving an organization more time to detect and respond. Furthermore, segmentation allows more granular control over data access to ensure users, devices, and applications only have access to the information necessary for their specific tasks, thus enhancing data protection and privacy. A segmented network showing marketing and finance subnets and the placement of network devices. Traffic between the two networks is controlled by the router. Images copyright 123rf.com. Isolation. Device isolation refers to segregating individual devices within a network to limit their interaction with other devices and systems. This aims to enhance endpoint protection by preventing the lateral spread of threats should a device become compromised. In the context of endpoint protection, device isolation creates barriers between devices so that a threat that infiltrates one device cannot easily spread to others. Device isolation restricts network traffic between devices, reducing the potential attack surface. This approach is particularly useful for threats like worms or ransomware, which often aim to propagate through networks quickly. Device isolation also limits breach impacts by ensuring that compromised devices cannot access the entire network. Antivirus and anti-malware. The first generation of antivirus software is characterized by signature-based detection and prevention of known viruses. An AV product will now perform generalized malware detection, meaning not just viruses and worms, but also Trojans, spyware, PUPs, cryptojackers, and so on. While AV software remains important, signature-based detection is widely recognized as insufficient for the prevention of data breaches. Disk encryption. Full disk encryption, FD, means that the entire contents of the drive or volume, including system files and folders, are encrypted. OS ACL-based security measures are quite simple to circumvent if an adversary can attach the drive to a different host OS. Drive encryption allays this security concern by making the contents of the drive accessible only in combination with the correct encryption key. Disk encryption can be applied to both hard disk drives, HDDs, and solid-state drives, SSDs. FD requires the secure storage of the key used to encrypt the drive contents. Normally, this is stored in a Trusted Platform Module, TPM. The TPM chip has a secure storage area to which a disk encryption program, such as Windows BitLocker, can write its keys. It is also possible to use a removable USB drive if USB is a boot device option. As part of the setup process, you create a recovery password or key. This can be used if the disk is moved to another computer or the TPM is damaged.
Description.
The left pane reads Control Panel Home followed by TPM Administration, Disk Management, and Privacy Statement under the head, See Also. The right pane is divided into two sections. The top one is titled BitLocker Drive Encryption. The text below reads, Help protect your files and folders from unauthorized access by protecting your drives with BitLocker. The bottom one is titled Operating System Drive. The link below reads, See BitLocker off. A Turn BitLocker On link is present on the right. Activating BitLocker Drive Encryption. Screenshot used with permission from Microsoft. One of the drawbacks of FD is that because the OS performs the cryptographic operations, performance is reduced. This issue is mitigated by self-encrypting drives, SED, where the cryptographic operations are performed by the drive controller. The SED uses a symmetric data/media encryption key, DK/MEK, for bulk encryption and stores the DK securely by encrypting it with an asymmetric key pair called either the authentication key, AK, or key encryption key, KK. The use of the AK is authenticated by the user password. This means that the user password can be changed without having to decrypt and re-encrypt the drive. Early types of SEDs used proprietary mechanisms, but many vendors now develop using the Opal storage specification, NVM Express org/wp-content/uploads/tcgndnvme_joint_white_paper-tcg_store/and_opal_nvme_final PDF. Developed by the Trusted Computing Group, TCG.
Device.
Description: laptops, desktops, mobile devices, and servers. Full disk encryption ensures that sensitive data is protected even if the storage device is removed from the device or accessed directly using other methods. For virtual machines, FD prevents direct access to data stored in the virtual machine's disk file. IoT devices. Internet of Things (IoT) devices, such as smart home devices, wearables, and industrial sensors, often collect and transmit sensitive data. Full disk encryption prevents unauthorized access to this data if the devices are compromised. External hard drives and USB flash drives and external media. Portable storage devices are prone to loss or theft. Full disk encryption ensures that the data stored on these devices remain protected, making it significantly harder for unauthorized individuals to access or retrieve the information. Patch management. No operating system, software application, or firmware implementation is free from vulnerabilities. As soon as a vulnerability is identified, vendors will try to correct it. At the same time, attackers will try to exploit it. Automated vulnerability scanners can effectively discover missing patches for the operating system plus a wide range of third-party software apps and devices/firmware. Scanning is only useful if effective procedures are in place to apply the missing patches. In residential and small networks, hosts are typically configured to auto-update, meaning they check for and install patches automatically. The major OS and application software products are well supported in terms of vendor-supplied fixes for security issues. In Windows, this process is handled by Windows Update, while in Linux, it can be configured via yumcron or apt unattended upgrades, depending on the package manager used by the distribution. Enterprise networks need to be cautious about automated deployment, however, as a patch incompatible with an application or workflow can cause availability issues. In rare cases, such as the infamous SolarWinds hack, npr.org/2002165/985439655/worst-nightmare-cybertac-the-untold-stories can be infected with malware that can then be spread via automated updates. There can also be performance and management issues when multiple applications run update clients on the same host. For example, as well as the OS updater, there is likely also a security software update, browser updater, Java updater, OEM driver updater, and so on. These issues can be mitigated by deploying an enterprise patch management suite. Some suites, such as Microsoft's System Center Configuration Manager, SCCM, / Endpoint Manager, docs, Microsoft.com/and-us/mem/config manager, are vendor-specific, while others are designed to support third-party applications and multiple OSes. Testing patches before deploying them into the production environment is crucial for maintaining the stability and security of software. By conducting thorough testing, organizations can identify potential issues or conflicts arising from the patch, ensuring that it does not introduce new vulnerabilities or disrupt critical operations. Testing helps mitigate the risk of unintended consequences and facilitates a more controlled deployment process, ultimately safeguarding the integrity and reliability of the environment. Testing is typically performed in testing environments built to mirror the production environment as much as appropriate. Also, it can be difficult to schedule patch operations, especially if applying the patch creates an availability risk to a critical system. If vulnerability assessments continually highlight issues with missing patches, patch management procedures should be upgraded. If the problem affects certain hosts only, it could indicate a compromise that should be investigated more closely. Patch management can be difficult for legacy systems, proprietary systems, and systems from vendors without robust security management plans, such as some types of Internet of Things devices. These systems will need compensating controls or some other form of risk mitigation if patches are not readily available. Advanced Endpoint Protection. Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR, and Extended Detection and Response, XDR. An Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR, product aims to provide real, time, and historical visibility into the compromise, contain the malware within a single host, and facilitate remediation of the host to its original state. The term EDR was coined by Gartner security researcher Anton Shivikin, and Gartner produces annual Magic Quadrant reports for both EPP, Gartner.com/and/documents/3848470, and EDR functionality within security suites. https://www.gartner.com/and/documents/3894086. Where earlier endpoint protection suites report to an on-premises management server, next-generation endpoint agents are more likely to be managed from a cloud portal and use artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning to perform user and entity behavior analysis. These analysis resources would be part of the security service provider's offering. Note that Managed Detection and Response, MDR, is a class of hosted security service, digitalguardian.com/blog/ what-manage-detection-and-benefits-how-choose-vendor- and EDR focuses on protecting endpoint devices like computers, laptops, and mobile devices by collecting and analyzing data from endpoints to detect, investigate, and respond to advanced threats that may bypass traditional security measures. EDR tools provide real-time monitoring and collection of endpoint data, allowing for fast response and investigation capabilities. EDR software is an important tool which detects and responds to advanced persistent threats and ransomware, and it provides valuable forensic insight after a breach. Extended Detection and Response, XDR, expands on EDR by providing broader visibility and response capabilities by extending protection beyond endpoints by incorporating data from the network, cloud platforms, email gateway, firewall, and other essential infrastructure components. Using a broader scope, XDR provides a comprehensive view of information technology resources to more effectively identify threats and enable faster responses. Host-based intrusion detection/prevention, HIDS/HIPS. Host-based intrusion detection system, HIDS, and host-based intrusion prevention system, HIPS, describe software tools that monitor and protect individual hosts, like computers or servers, from unauthorized access and malicious activities. HIDS/HIPS requires deploying and configuring specialized software agents that continuously monitor and analyze endpoints. HIDS and HIPS systems use signature-based detection, anomaly detection, and behavior analysis to identify suspicious activities. Both systems collect and correlate data from various sources, such as system logs, network traffic, and user activities, to identify patterns and indicators of compromise or malicious behavior. Host-based intrusion detection systems focus on detection and alerting, providing notifications to systems administrators or security personnel when suspicious activities are detected. In contrast, host-based intrusion prevention systems detect and actively respond to threats by automatically blocking or mitigating them. One of the core features of HIDS is File Integrity Monitoring, FIM. This may be implemented as a standalone feature. When software is installed from a legitimate source, using signed code in the case of Windows or a secure repository in the case of Linux, the OS package manager checks the signature or fingerprint of each executable file and notifies the user if there is a problem. FIM software audits key system files to ensure they match the authorized versions. In Windows, the Windows File Protection Service runs automatically, and the System File Checker, SFC, tool can be used manually to verify OS system files. Tripwire, Tripwire.com, and OSSEC, OSSEC.net, are examples of multi-platform tools with options to protect a wider range of applications. File integrity monitoring is used to detect changes on endpoints, such as changes to important files or the operating system configuration. When detected, changes can be investigated to determine whether they are authorized. User Behavior Analytics, UBA/User and Entity Behavior Analytics, UEBA. User Behavior Analytics, UBA, also known as User and Entity Behavior Analytics, UEBA, is a cybersecurity approach based on monitoring and analyzing the behavior of users within an organization to detect anomalies indicative of potential threats, such as insider threats, compromised accounts, or fraud. UBA leverages machine learning, data science, and statistical analysis techniques to establish a baseline profile for an organization's users and entities, including how, when, and where they access the network, what resources they use, and other behavior patterns. Once baseline profiles have been established, the UBA system continuously monitors and compares new behavior against the established baseline, alerting security personnel to unusual or suspicious activities. For example, UBA would alert about a user who regularly downloads small sets of files during standard business hours, but suddenly starts downloading large volumes of data late at night. Another example may include a user who typically logs in from a specific domestic location but suddenly starts logging in from a foreign country. These activities could indicate a potential data breach or account compromise and trigger a UBA system alert. Some commercial UBA products available at the time of writing include the following. Endpoint configuration. If endpoint security is breached, there are several classes of vectors to consider for mitigation. Social engineering. If the malware was executed by a user, use security education and awareness to reduce the risk of future attacks succeeding. Review permissions to see if the account could be operated with a lower privilege level. Vulnerabilities. If the malware exploited a software fault, install the patch or isolate the system until a patch can be developed. Lack of security controls. If the attack could have been prevented by endpoint protection/AV, host firewall, content filtering, DLP, or MDM, investigate the possibility of deploying them to the endpoint. If this is not practical, isolate the system from being exploited by the same vector. Configuration drift. If the malware exploited an undocumented configuration change, shadow IT software, or an unauthorized service/port, for instance, reapply the baseline configuration and investigate configuration management procedures to prevent this type of ad hoc change. Weak configuration. If the configuration was correctly applied but was exploited anyway, review the template to devise more secure settings. Make sure the template is applied to similar hosts. Access control. Access control refers to regulating and managing the permissions granted to individuals, software, systems, and networks to access resources or information. Access controls ensure that only authorized entities can perform specific actions or access certain data, while unauthorized entities are denied access. Access control concepts apply to networks, physical access, data, applications, and the cloud. Principle of least privilege. Implementing the principle of least privilege, PRLP, is a cornerstone of improving endpoint protection and minimizing the risk of security issues. The principle of least privilege dictates that users, applications, and processes should only be granted the minimum permissions necessary to complete their duties and nothing more. There are several practical methods for implementing least privilege. An essential first step to effectively implementing least privilege is thoroughly auditing user roles, privileges, and responsibilities. This process allows organizations to understand what access each user needs to perform their job role effectively. Access controls and permissions can be adjusted to adopt a principle of least privilege that best reflects the audit results. User and account management tools are also essential when implementing the principle of least privilege. Regularly reviewing and removing unused or unnecessary accounts reduces the potential targets for an attacker. Similarly, temporary privileges, which grant additional access rights for a limited time and only when required, can help keep privileges as restrictive as possible. Another practical approach to restricting access is using role-based access control, RBAC. RBAC assigns system access rights based on predefined roles, and each role has a carefully defined set of permissions that match the requirements of any particular role within the organization. This approach ensures that users have just enough access to perform their tasks, but nothing more. The principle of least privilege also applies to software applications and operating systems, not just to users. For instance, ensuring that applications run with the minimum necessary permissions can prevent them from being exploited to carry out privileged actions. Access control lists. Access control lists, ACLs, in computer systems and networks are used to enforce access control policies. An ACL is a list of rules or entries that specify which users or groups are allowed or denied access to specific resources or perform certain actions. In networks, ACLs are associated with routers, firewalls, or similar devices and define rules that determine how network traffic is filtered or forwarded based on criteria like source IP addresses, destination IP addresses, ports, or protocols. ACLs can help to control network access and protect against unauthorized or malicious activities. ACLs control access to files, directories, or system resources in operating systems and file systems. Each access control entry, ACE, typically contains a user or group identifier and associated permissions controlling actions that are allowed or denied. These permissions often include read, write, execute, and sometimes more granular limits such as modify, delete, or list. While ACLs offer flexibility and control, managing complex access control policies with numerous ACL entries can become challenging. Complexity increases the risk of misconfigurations. Therefore, proper planning, periodic reviews, and best practice configurations are essential when implementing and maintaining ACLs. File system permissions. With file system security, each object in the file system has an access control list, ACL, associated with it. The ACL contains a list of accounts, principals, allowed to access the resource and the permissions they have over it. The order of ACEs in the ACL is important in determining effective permissions for a given account. ACLs can be enforced by a file system that supports permissions, such as NTFS, ext3/ext4, or ZFS. Description. The screen is divided into 3 sections. The first section reads, Principal, Everyone Type, Allow, and applies to this folder, subfolders, and files. Select a principal link is present on the top. The second section, Advanced Permissions, shows 3 checkboxes selected, Read Attributes, Read Extended Attributes, and Read Permissions. A Show Basic Permissions link is on the top and a Clear All button at the bottom. The third section reads, Add a condition to limit access. The principal will be granted the specified permissions only if conditions are met. Add a condition link is present at the bottom. 2 buttons, OK, selected, and Cancel are present in the bottom right. Configuring an access control entry for a folder. screenshot used with permission from Microsoft. For example, in Linux, there are 3 basic permissions. Read R is the ability to access and view the contents of a file or list the contents of a directory. Write W is the ability to save changes to a file or create, rename, and delete files in a directory. Also requires execute. Execute X is the ability to run a script, program, or other software file, or the ability to access a directory, execute a file from that directory, or perform a task on that directory, such as file search. These permissions can be applied in the context of the owner user, U, a group account, G, and all other users /world, O. A permission string lists the permissions granted in each of these contexts. D RWX RX RX home. The string above shows that for the directory, D, the owner has read, write, and execute permissions, while the group context and other users have read and execute permissions. The chmod command is used to modify file permissions in Unix/Linux systems. It can be used in symbolic mode or absolute mode. In symbolic mode, the command works as follows. Chmod G plus W, wex home. The effect of this command is to append write permission to the group context and remove execute permission from the other context. By contrast, the command can also be used to replace existing permissions. For example, the following command applies the configuration shown in the first permission string, which sets the permissions to RWXRXRX. Chmod U equals RWX, G equals RX, O equals RX home. In absolute mode, permissions are assigned using octal notation, where R equals 4, W equals 2, and X equals 1. For example, the following command has the same effect. Chmod 755 home. In this example, the 755 correlates to the permissions assigned to the user, group, and others, where user permissions are represented by 7, group permissions are 5, and others are also 5. The numbers are generated by adding the values associated with R, read, W, write, and X, execute. The only combination of values that can result in 7 is 4 plus 2 plus 1 or R, W, X. Similarly, the only combination of values resulting in 5 is 4 plus 1 or Rx. This means that the owner has R, W, and X, whereas the group and others have only R and X. Application allow lists and block lists. One element of endpoint configuration is an execution control policy that defines applications that can or cannot be run. An allow list or approved list denies execution unless the process is explicitly authorized. A block list or deny list generally allows execution but explicitly prohibits listed processes. The contents of allow lists and block lists needs to be updated in response to incidents and ongoing threat hunting and monitoring. Threat hunting may also provoke a strategic change. For example, if you rely principally on explicit denies, but your systems are subject to numerous intrusions, you will have to consider adopting a least privileges model and using a deny unless listed approach. This sort of change can be highly disruptive, however, so it must be preceded by a risk assessment and business impact analysis. Execution control can also be tricky to configure effectively, with many opportunities for threat actors to evade the controls. Detailed analysis of the attack might suggest the need for changes to the existing mechanism or for a more robust system. Monitoring. Monitoring plays a vital role in endpoint hardening, helping enforce and maintain the security measures put in place during the hardening process. Once devices are hardened, monitoring helps ensure these conditions remain in place. Security analysts can detect changes that weaken the hardened configuration through continuous monitoring. For instance, if a previously disabled port is detected as open or a service that was disabled is changed to enabled, monitoring tools can alert analysts of the change, which may indicate a breach. Additionally, monitoring can provide valuable data for compliance and auditing purposes. Regular reports on the status of endpoint devices can verify that hardening baselines have been effectively deployed and maintained, supporting compliance with various regulations and industry standards. Configuration enforcement. Configuration enforcement describes methods used to ensure that systems and devices within an organization's network adhere to mandatory security configurations. Configuration enforcement generally depends upon a few important capabilities. Standardized configuration baselines are defined by organizations like NIST, CS, or the organization itself and used as the benchmark for how systems and devices should be configured. Automated configuration management tools are used to apply and maintain standardized configuration baselines across the environment automatically. Continuous monitoring and compliance checks are crucial to detect deviations from mandatory configurations. Change management processes ensure configuration changes are properly reviewed, tested, and approved before implementation. Managing firewall rules across an organization's network is a practical example of a configuration setting that can benefit from configuration enforcement. An organization can use an automated configuration management tool to ensure device firewalls are correctly configured, including blocking all incoming traffic by default and only allowing specific, necessary connections. Continuously monitoring detects any changes and automatically reverts them to enforce the secure, approved configuration. Additionally, regular compliance checks ensure that firewalls adhere to approved configuration settings, and any changes need to be reviewed and approved via proper change management processes prior to implementation. Group Policy. Group Policy is a feature of the Microsoft Windows operating system and provides centralized management and configuration of operating systems, applications, and user settings in an Active Directory environment. Group policies enforce security settings, such as those mandated in a baseline, by applying consistent settings across all systems linked to specific group policies. In general terms, group policies are linked to containers called organizational units, OUs, that normally contain user and computer objects. The group policies linked to the OU apply to all objects contained within it. Examples of common group policy settings include password policies, user rights, Windows firewall settings, system update settings, software installation restrictions, and many others. Applying settings centrally using group policy reduces potential issues related to misconfigurations or inconsistent settings. SE-Linux. SE-Linux is a security feature of the Linux kernel that supports access control security policies, including mandatory access controls, MAC. SE-Linux allows more granular permission control over every process and system object within an operating system, strictly limiting the resources a process can access and what operations it can perform. SE-Linux operates on the principle that if a process or user does not need resource access to operate, it will be blocked to isolate applications better, restrict system and file access, and prevent malicious or flawed programs from causing harm to the system. SE-Linux capabilities are also available on the Android operating system https://source android.com/docs/security/features/selinux. Due to the significant architectural differences between Linux and Android, SE-Linux capability on Android is enabled using SE Android to provide similar functionality, but using a separately maintained codebase.
In this demonstration, we're going to look at application control. Application control focuses on controlling the applications a user at a workstation can access over a network. This is similar to what a firewall does. For example, a packet filtering firewall examines traffic going through it. Based on its rule set, a firewall will block traffic using specific ports or protocols, so you should be able to control application access with a firewall. However, if you have a savvy user trying to access a forbidden application on the internet, the user can reconfigure the session to use a protocol or port that is commonly left open on most network firewalls, for example, port 80. A user could reconfigure a game application blocked by the firewall to use port 80. The packet filtering firewall doesn't examine the contents of the packet, only the protocol, TCP, UDP, and the port. So a firewall wouldn't block the game traffic redirected to a port that's used for legitimate traffic. Application control software, on the other hand, focuses on the application signature. In much the same way that antivirus software uses signatures to detect viruses on your system, application control software uses application signatures to identify traffic associated with a specific application. It disregards the port number used. In this demonstration, we're going to configure application control software to block specific network applications. To do this, we have our network set up similar to what is shown in this picture here. with user computers accessing the network through a shared switch, some wirelessly, some wired, and ultimately passing through the firewall that also has application control software configured on it, to our router and then out to the internet. In other words, all traffic passes through here, and as such, the application control software can look at those packets before it allows entry or exit from the network. For this demo, we'll be using the Untangle software that includes an application control module. Certain aspects of this program are free. You have to pay for the application control, but you can try it out for free for 14 days. You can click up here to see what applications are currently installed. You can see there's a variety of applications or modules that they have. We have Captive Portal, which requires, for instance, users to accept a use agreement before getting onto our network. There's a firewall, there are some phishing blockers or virus protection. We're interested in this application control. Even though the application control is up and running and turned on, it's actually not filtering much. Before we can use it, we need to tell it which applications we would like to filter. In order to demonstrate this, before I configure that, I want to show you that I have access on a machine that's within my network. I'm going to switch over to my Windows 10 machine now. My Windows 10 machine is one of these computers over here. Let's go look at it now. As you can see, my Windows 10 machine has access to the intranet right now. We can go out and do a Google search on application controllers, or in this case, a Bing search, and you can see it returns results. Perhaps I want to check Facebook and see what's going on in my life. Or I could pull up Skype and start to chat my life away. You can see that these applications are working. Let's go ahead now and switch back to our application control and enable some rules to prohibit access to these services. We'll come here to the Applications tab, and then we need to go down and find those specific services. You can see that there's a wide variety of services that are listed here. I wish there was a better way to search for the particular service that you're wanting to block, but for now, we'll have to be content with just scrolling down. Look at the thousands, over 2,000 different applications that you can block. So I find Facebook here, and I'm going to go ahead and block that. I could also flag it so that it ends up in one of my reports. This tar pit option right here simply allows the connection to be established, but then the application control software Untangle drops the information so that both sides think there's a connection, but no data actually gets through. We blocked Facebook. Let's go ahead and scroll down and block Skype now. There's lots of different Skype services. I'm going to just block them all. You can see that it's fairly granular in what you can do, allow, or prohibit. Once you're done, then you need to click the Save button. Unfortunately, the application doesn't scale well, so you'll have to scroll down to get to that Save button. And there it is right there. Once you've clicked that Save button, now those applications and those rules will be enforced. Let me now switch back over to my Windows 10 environment and see the impact of those rule changes. Let's go ahead and try to refresh Facebook. You'll notice that nothing works. As we refresh Facebook, you see that the page can't be reached. However, other pages are still accessible, and we can still do our search. Let's go investigate Skype now. You can see here that my contacts are no longer online, and it's having trouble connecting over there. Again, you can get pretty granular on what you want to block and what you want to allow. Let's switch back over to the Untangle server now. You can see how effective that was in blocking the traffic. We can go look, and it monitors how many sessions are there. Looks like it had 2,500 scans and allowed 1,700 of those. It flagged 70 different applications and kept track of those. You have a kind of dashboard around what it has done. You can easily turn this on and off by simply clicking right here. And then if we switch back over to our Windows 10, you'll see that all of a sudden I can now access Skype and Facebook. Let's do that. No problem. And if we pull up Skype, you can see that it's back online. Switching back over to our Untangle server, let's just look at a couple more things. This first column is just the application signature. You can see the name and the category. This is nice because you can ban whole groups of applications based on the type of category or the presumed productivity associated with that application, risk associated with it, and then a short description of that. There are others. You can go look at the specific roles, or you can view reports behind this. So once again, very easy to set up, but very useful in helping to control your environment and what's going on within your enterprise. That's it for this demonstration. In this demo, we introduced you to application control software. We first talked about what application control software does. We then configured the Untangle application control software to block specific traffic, in this case, Skype and Facebook. Then we went to the client system on the internal network and we tried to access a forbidden application and it was blocked.
Hardening technique.
Different hardening approaches are required to protect endpoints in response to varied and constantly evolving cybersecurity threats. These threats require a layered and comprehensive defense strategy addressing vulnerabilities at multiple levels, from physical access to network protocols, operating system configurations, and user behaviors. Protecting ports. Physical device port hardening involves restricting the physical interfaces on a device that can be used to connect to it, thereby reducing potential avenues of physical attack. One common technique is disabling unnecessary physical ports such as USB, HDMI, or serial ports when they serve no business purpose. Doing so helps prevent unauthorized data transfer, installation of malicious software, or direct access to a system. Port control software provides additional protection by only allowing authorized devices to connect via physical ports based on device identifiers. For instance, it might block all USB mass storage devices except company-approved ones. Security analysts can leverage settings in device firmware or UEFI/BIOS for port hardening to disable physical ports or to require a password before a device can boot from a non-standard source, like a USB drive. For devices such as tablets and laptops that depend upon wireless protocols, disabling the automatic network connection feature can prevent the device from using potentially insecure or rogue networks. As revealed by researcher Karsten Knoll in his Bad USB paper, https://assets, website-files.com/6098EB4F4B0288367FBB62BC77C194C for E0, FE8FC5, E4B5_SR Labs-BudUSB-Black Hat-V1 PDF. Exploiting the firmware of external storage devices, such as USB flash drives and even standard-looking device charging cables, presents adversaries with an incredible toolkit. The firmware can be reprogrammed to make the device look like another device class, such as a keyboard. In this case, it could then be used to inject a series of keystrokes upon an attachment or work as a keylogger. The device could also be programmed to act like a network device and corrupt name resolution, redirecting the user to malicious websites. Another example is the O.MG cable, theverge.com/20196/8/155/20800805/Apple-Mac-Lightning-Cables-Mike-Grover-MG-OMG-Cables-Defcon-Mike-Grover-MG which packs enough processing capability into an ordinary-looking USB Lightning cable to run an access point and keylogger. A modified device may have visual clues that distinguish it from a mass-manufactured thumb drive or cable, but these may be difficult to spot. You should warn users of the risks and repeat the advice to never attach devices of unknown provenance to their computers and smartphones. If you suspect a device as an attack vector, observe a sandbox lab system, sometimes referred to as a sheep dip, closely when attaching the device. Look for command prompt windows or processes, such as the command interpreter starting and changes to the registry or other system files. Not all attacks have to be so esoteric. USB sticks infected with ordinary malware are still incredibly prolific infection vectors. Hosts should always be configured to prevent autorun when USB devices are attached. USB ports can be blocked altogether using most types of host intrusion detection systems, HIDS. Protect logical ports by implementing measures to secure and control access to ports within a computer system or network. Logical ports are software-based communication features that enable data exchange between applications or services. Common examples of logical ports include the well-known ports used by TCP/IP and UDP protocols. Firewalls protect logical ports by examining network traffic and enforcing security policies to allow or block specific connections based on port numbers, source and destination addresses, and protocols. Service hardening practices ensure that services running on logical ports are hardened against security threats. Examples include keeping software updated and turning off unnecessary services.
Encryption technique.
Endpoint encryption is critical to protecting sensitive data, especially in an enterprise setting. Several different approaches are required to protect data on endpoints. Some important ones include the following. Full disk encryption, FD, encrypts the entire hard drive of a device. It ensures that all data, including the operating system and user files, are protected even while the operating system is not running. Tools like BitLocker for Windows and FileVault for macOS provide full disk encryption capabilities. Removable media encryption ensures that data remains protected even when physically removed from devices, such as SD cards or USB mass storage devices. Many FD tools also include options for encrypting removable media. Virtual private networks, VPNs, complement endpoint encryption by providing a secure tunnel for data transmission that protects against eavesdropping, on-path, and many other attack types. Email encryption protects sensitive information stored in emails using protocols like PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, or S/MIME, secure/multipurpose internet mail extensions. Host-based firewalls and IPS. Host-based firewalls and intrusion prevention systems, IPS, are vital elements of endpoint hardening, as they provide controls for incoming and outgoing network traffic and are essential for detecting potential attacks. An important technique for using them when hardening endpoints involves implementing default deny policies to block all traffic unless explicitly allowed. This tactic ensures that only approved services and applications can communicate. Configuring firewalls to block or allow traffic based on port numbers is also critical to minimize entry points for attack. Traffic filtering enables firewalls and IPS to sift through traffic based on parameters like IP addresses, protocols, and services to block malicious traffic or only allow traffic to use secure protocols. An integral part of IPS is detecting and preventing intrusions by monitoring for known malicious patterns or anomalies in network traffic. Advanced host-based firewalls often include application control features which permit only trusted applications to communicate. The logs generated by host-based firewalls and IPS support rapid detection and response when integrated with other security tools like Security Information and Event Management (SIEM) systems. Installing endpoint protection. To ensure maximum protection and efficient management, deploying and managing endpoint protection agents on workstations, laptops, and servers in an enterprise environment requires strategic planning and adherence to established best practice configuration and management practices. Create a deployment plan with considerations such as the deployment order, such as which devices or departments get agents first, timeframes, and leveraging stages to limit potential disruptions caused by endpoint protection settings. Standardize configurations for endpoint protection across all devices to ensure consistency in protection levels and simplify compliance management. Automate deployments using tools like Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager, SCCM, group policy, or third-party solutions to save time, improve consistency, and reduce the risk of human error. Updates and patches to endpoint protection agent software and definitions are required to ensure the highest levels of protection against the latest known threats. Monitor endpoint protection agents to check for alerts or signs of potential security incidents, verify that agents are running, and ensure that updates and patches are applied successfully. Centralize management to provide a comprehensive view of endpoint configurations, updates, and status. Centralized management also allows administrators to enforce global security policies. Changing defaults and removing unnecessary software. Changing default passwords and removing unnecessary software are two fundamental practices in hardening an endpoint to strengthen its security posture. Default passwords, often set by manufacturers, are widely known and easily discoverable, making devices that use them particularly vulnerable to unauthorized access. Therefore, changing these passwords to strong, unique credentials is crucial as part of the initial setup process for any device or system. Removing unnecessary software is another critical step when hardening an endpoint. Each software application introduces potential vulnerabilities that malicious actors could exploit. The attack surface is significantly reduced by reducing the number of software applications to only those necessary for the device's intended function. This includes removing unnecessary applications, but also disabling unnecessary features or services within remaining applications. This practice simplifies the maintenance and patch management process because there are fewer applications to update, reducing the chances of missing a critical security patch. An enterprise-grade multifunction network printer presents a variety of potential security vulnerabilities if not adequately managed. These complex devices often arrive with manufacturer-set default passwords intended for initial setup and administrative access, which are typically widely known and easily accessible. Changing these passwords immediately upon installation to unique, strong passwords is critical. Multifunction printers usually boast a broad array of features. Features not explicitly needed in the environment, such as cloud printing capabilities, email features, or web server interfaces, should be disabled to minimize potential attack vectors. Regular firmware updates from the manufacturer are crucial to patching any known vulnerabilities in older firmware versions, fortifying the printer's security. If possible, utilize encrypted network protocols like HTTPS for web interfaces and SNMPv3 for device management to protect data, including passwords, through unencrypted protocols. Access to the printer should be based on the principle of least privilege, granting only the access necessary for specific tasks. Decommissioning. Decommissioning processes play a vital role in supporting security within an organization. When a device is no longer needed, it often contains residual data, potentially sensitive information, and system configurations that could be exploited. A thorough and systematic decommissioning process ensures that all data is securely erased or overwritten to reduce the risk of exposure. Decommissioning also involves resetting devices to their factory settings and eliminating any residual settings. Updating inventory records during decommissioning is also important to maintain an accurate account of active assets and support compliance requirements that mandate accurate asset tracking and secure disposal. Decommissioning hardware securely is essential as hardware often stores sensitive data on internal drives and retains potentially exploitable configuration and user data. Data sanitization is a critically important step in the decommissioning process and describes how all data on the device or removable media is securely erased to ensure no recoverable data remains. Additionally, the device should be reset to its factory settings via a management console or other utility, eliminating any residual system configurations or settings that could pose a security risk. Disposing of physical equipment often warrants the physical destruction of some internal components like memory modules, hard disk drives, HDD, solid-state disks, SSD, Endpoint 2, or other storage modules, especially if they have stored sensitive data. In some scenarios, a professional disposal service specializing in certified secure disposal of electronic components may be the most appropriate choice. The final step in the decommissioning process involves documentation and updating inventory records to reflect that the device has been decommissioned. This step ensures an accurate asset record and compliance with security standards and regulations. For example, a multifunction network printer's decommissioning steps include sanitization of stored print jobs, scanned documents, and, potentially, fax transmissions, wiping stored network credentials and configuration data, performing a full factory reset, secure disposal or destruction of physical components, and asset inventory updates to reflect the device's status.
It's important to know many things about services: how to start them, see if they're running, stop them, restart them, enable them, and disable them. For this demo, we're going to work with an Ubuntu Linux system and practice working with some services. I'm already logged onto the system and I'll start the terminal. I have a shortcut here, but you can also go here to show applications and then search for terminal in the search box. I want to see the init.d directory. We're interested in services that are running. Let's go to the directory by typing cd/etc/init.d. Press enter. Now I'll do an ls to see what's in this directory. All right, here are my services. Here, I have Apache Server. Here, I have MySQL. Over here, we have SSH. And down here, there's FTP. On this system, there's no reason to have FTP running, so let's see how we can stop it. I'll type cd to get back to root and clear to clean up my screen. So far, I've used init.d to view the services. To manage the services, I'm going to use the systemctl command. Using init.d scripts to manage services isn't possible on the newer systems anymore, but I still use it to view services sometimes. Let's look at my FTP server. First, I want to see its status. So let's type sudo systemctl status vsftpd and press enter. It says it's enabled, but it's currently stopped. I'm going to use my up arrow to get to the last command, change it from status to start, and press enter. Now I'll arrow up until I see status and press enter again. I can see that it's running along with some statistics, such as how long it's been up. I can also see the process ID, or PID, right here. Let's clear the screen. Now I'm going to use my up arrow to go back to my last command. I'm going to backspace here, get rid of the word start, and type in stop to stop the FTP service. I'll arrow up again until I get to status and press enter. Now you can see that the process has stopped. I'll press Ctrl-C to exit this command and then type clear. Now I might say, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. It's okay. We'll just arrow up again until we get to start. Press enter and everything's just fine again. What if I made changes to my FTP server and I need to restart the service? I can just do a restart. Let's up arrow to the last command, backspace here, type in restart, and press enter. Arrow up to the last command, backspace, and change this to status. Press enter, and you can see my service restarted. I'll clear the screen again. So far, we've stopped and started our FTP service. But what if I want to have it start at system startup, or perhaps not start when the system starts up? First, let's see if the service is enabled or not. I can do that with the isEnabled command. I'll arrow up to the last command and change this part to isEnabled. Press enter, and right here, it says that it's enabled. What if you want to have your service start every time your system starts? You can do that by changing this to enable and pressing enter. Now you can see the status is enabled. If I don't want the service to start, I'll arrow up and change this to disable. Press enter, and that'll tell the system not to start FTP at startup. I'll arrow up and change this to status. And you can see that up here it says disabled. So when the system boots, FTP won't start. Note that the service is still running at the moment because all we did was keep it from running at startup. We didn't stop it from running at this moment. That's it for this demo. In this demo, we worked with system services. First, we viewed the services to see what was on our system. Then we practiced stopping, starting, enabling, and disabling services.
Hardening specialized devices. Industrial Control Systems, ICS, including supervisory control and data acquisition, SCADA systems, embedded systems, real-time operating systems, RTOS, and Internet of Things, IoT, devices have been targeted for attack more frequently in recent years due to their vital role in controlling critical infrastructures. General hardening strategies apply to these systems, including common controls such as regular system updates, disabling unnecessary services, limiting network access, using secure credentials, and using role-based access controls. Network-level security should also be implemented to protect them, such as firewalls, IDS/IPS, transport encryption protocols like TLS and SSH, regular security audits, and penetration tests to help identify and remediate vulnerabilities. Hardening ICS/SCADA. For ICS/SCADA systems, Hardening involves strict network segmentation to isolate these systems from the wider network and robust authentication and authorization processes to limit system access strictly. ICS/SCADA is often used to control physical operations. Ensuring protection from cyber and physical threats is more crucial because breaches can result in environmental disasters, power/gas/water utility failure, and loss of life. A unique control often used to protect ICS/SCADA is unidirectional gateways, or data diodes, which ensure that data only flows outward from these systems, protecting them from inbound attacks. Hardening embedded NRDAs. Given their constrained resources, simple embedded systems, NRDAs typically do not support traditional security measures. Ideally, security is designed into these systems from the start, considering aspects such as secure coding practices, minimal design, where the system has only the features it needs to perform its function, secure boot mechanisms, physical tamper-proofing, and comprehensive security testing. The organization must select devices based on security capabilities and quality instead of focusing solely on usability features and cost. IoT devices present similar hardening challenges as those outlined previously, but also include significant privacy issues. Ultimately, each type of device requires a carefully tailored approach to hardening. Security standards and certifications play a significant role in the security and integrity of real-time operating systems, RTOS, and embedded systems by providing guidelines, best practices, and benchmarks for designing, implementing, and evaluating the security of these systems. Security standards define requirements, controls, and procedures relevant to RTOS and embedded systems and include common criteria, ISO/IEC 15408, IEC 62443, MISHRA C, and CERT Secure Coding Standards. Certifications demonstrate compliance with specific security standards, assure that a system or product meets pre-established security requirements, and include ISO 27001, IEC 61508, and others. Security standards and certifications help establish a framework for assessing, implementing, and validating security controls in RTOS and embedded systems. They provide a common language and criteria for evaluating the security of these systems and provide confidence in their security capabilities. Mobile device hardening. Exam objectives covered. 4.1 Given a scenario, apply common security techniques to computing resources. Mobile device hardening is critical to cybersecurity and includes several essential practices designed to protect devices from threats and vulnerabilities, including, at a minimum, controls such as regular updates, access restrictions, secure configurations, encryption, screen locks, network access controls, application restrictions, limiting features like Bluetooth and NFC, and leveraging mobile device management, MDM, solutions to centralize management and enforce device compliance. Mobile hardening techniques. There are many similarities between hardening mobile devices, or traditional desktop computers. Both necessitate operating system patches, strong, unique passwords, endpoint protection software, the principle of least privilege, and other similar controls. However, there are also differences based on special features available with mobile devices. For example, mobile devices are more prone to physical loss or theft, increasing the importance of remote wiping capabilities, encryption, and secure lock screens. The mobile app ecosystem includes many apps with different access permission requirements that present unique data privacy and protection challenges. Compared to traditional computers, mobile devices typically have GPS, Bluetooth, and are NFC-enabled, which opens additional avenues for attacks if not adequately managed. Deployment models. Mobile device deployment models are critical in defining how an organization uses, manages, and secures devices. The chosen deployment model impacts everything from the user experience to the organization's level of control over the device. Bring your own device, BYOD, means the mobile device is owned by the employee. The device must comply with established requirements developed by the organization, such as OS version and device capabilities, and the employee must agree to having corporate apps installed and acknowledge the organization's right to perform audit and compliance checks within the limits of legal and regulatory rules. This model is popular with employees but poses significant risk for security operations. Corporate-owned, business-only, COBO, means the device is the property of the organization and may only be used for company business. Corporate-owned, personally enabled COPE means the device is chosen and supplied by the organization and remains its property. The employee may use it to access personal email and social media accounts and for personal web browsing, subject to the requirements of established acceptable use policies. Choose your own device, CYOD, is similar to COPE except the employee is given a choice of devices to select from a pre-established list. Models such as Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, Choose Your Own Device, CYOD, and Corporate-Owned, Personally Enabled, COPE, provide varying degrees of control and flexibility to both the organization and the employee. For example, BYOD can offer equipment cost savings to the organization and flexibility for employees, but it also introduces security challenges caused by mixing personal and professional data. In contrast, COPE gives the organization greater control over the device, thereby improving security, but it requires more spending on equipment. Selecting the appropriate mobile device deployment model is vital to effectively balance productivity, user satisfaction, cost efficiency, and security in the workplace. Mobile Device Management. Mobile Device Management, MDM, is a critical strategy IT departments use to manage, secure, and enforce policies on smartphones, tablets, and other endpoints. The significance of MDM has grown dramatically due to the increase in popularity of remote work and Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, policies. MDM functionality is broad and includes sophisticated security management features, making it an essential tool in enterprise IT management. MDM allows IT departments to maintain an inventory of all mobile devices accessing corporate resources and helps ensure that only authorized devices maintain access. Additionally, MDM can enforce security policies, such as enforcing device encryption or mandating screen locks. MDM can enable remote lock or wipe capabilities to protect sensitive data if a device is lost or stolen. MDM helps centralize and enforce device hardening configurations and can reduce vulnerabilities through standard controls such as disabling unnecessary features or services, enforcing security features, and restricting app installations. MDM can also manage device updates and patches to ensure they are protected against known vulnerabilities and quarantine or remove devices that don't meet security requirements. Some common tasks managed by MDM include distributing and updating enterprise applications, managing corporate email accounts, managing device geo-tracking and geofencing, managing application allow or block listing, controlling internet access or use, and many other features. Several popular MDM platforms are available in the market at the time of writing. Apple's MDM solution is built into its operating systems, allowing for managing Macs, iPhones, and iPads, and Google has an equivalent solution for Android devices known as Android Enterprise. Platform-agnostic solutions include platforms such as Microsoft Intune, VMware AirWatch, and IBM MOS 360. Platform-agnostic solutions provide extensive features and capabilities to meet a wide range of needs, but can be complicated and expensive to implement and manage. Full device encryption and external media. All but the early versions of mobile device OSes for smartphones and tablets provide full device encryption. In iOS, there are various levels of encryption. All user data on the device is always encrypted, but the key is stored on the device. This is primarily used as a means of wiping the device. The OS just needs to delete the key to make the data inaccessible rather than wiping each storage location. Email data and any apps using the data protection option are subject to a second round of encryption using a key derived from and protected by the user's credential. This provides security for data in the event that the device is stolen. Not all user data is encrypted using the data protection option. Contacts, SMS messages, and pictures are not, for example. In iOS, data protection encryption is enabled automatically when you configure a password lock on the device. In Android, There are substantial differences in encryption options between versions. Source, android.com/security/encryption. As of Android 10, there is no full disk encryption as it is considered too detrimental to performance. User data is encrypted at the file level by default. A mobile device contains a solid-state, flash memory, drive for persistent storage of apps and data. Some Android handsets support removable storage using external media, such as a plug-in micro secure digital SD card slot. Some may support the connection of USB-based storage devices. The mobile OS encryption software might allow encryption of the removable storage, too, but this is not always the case. Care should be taken to apply encryption to storage cards using third-party software if necessary and to limit storing sensitive data on them. A microSD HSM is a small form-factor hardware security module designed to store cryptographic keys securely. This allows the cryptographic material to be used with different devices, such as a laptop and smartphone. Location services. Geolocation is the use of network attributes to identify or estimate the physical position of a device. The device uses location services to determine its current position. Location services can make use of two systems. Global Positioning System, GPS, is a means of determining the device's latitude and longitude based on information received from satellites via a GPS sensor. Indoor Positioning System, IPS, works out a device's location by using trilateration to determine its proximity to other radio sources, such as cell towers, Wi-Fi access points, and Bluetooth/RFID beacons. Location Services is available to any app where the user has granted the app permission to use it. The primary concern surrounding location services is one of privacy. Although very useful for maps and turn-by-turn navigation, it provides a mechanism to track an individual's movements and therefore their social and business habits. The problem is further compounded by the plethora of mobile apps that require access to location services and then both send the information to the application developers and store it within the device's file structure. If an attacker can gain access to this data, then stalking, social engineering, and even identity theft become real possibilities. Geofencing and camera/microphone enforcement. Geofencing is the practice of creating a virtual boundary based on real-world geography. Geofencing can be a useful tool with respect to controlling the use of camera or video functions, or applying context-aware authentication. An organization may use geofencing to create a perimeter around its office property and, subsequently, limit the functionality of any devices that exceed this boundary. An unlocked smartphone could be locked and forced to re-authenticate when entering the premises, and the camera and microphone could be disabled. The device's position is obtained from location services. Description. The screen is divided into 3 vertical windows. The first window is titled Create Profile. It has fields to fill in the name, description, platform, and profile type. Settings Configure option is selected to open the next window. A Create button is at the bottom. The second window is Titled Device Restrictions, Android. It lists the categories to configure settings. General, 11 settings available option is selected to open the next window, General, Android. This window displays several options. Each option has 2 buttons, Block and Not Configured. OK button is present at the bottom right. Restricting device permissions such as camera and screen capture using Intune. Screenshot used with permission from Microsoft. GPS tagging. GPS tagging is the process of adding geographical identification metadata, such as the latitude and longitude where the device was located at the time, to media such as photographs, SMS messages, video, and so on. It allows the app to place the media at specific latitude and longitude coordinates. GPS tagging is highly sensitive personal information and potentially confidential organizational data. GPS-tagged pictures uploaded to social media could be used to track a person's movements and location. For example, a Russian soldier revealed troop positions by uploading GPS-tagged selfies to Instagram. ArsTechnica.com/ Cellular and GPS connection methods. Mobile devices use a variety of connection methods to establish communications in local and personal area networks and for internet data access via service providers.
Description.
The screen is divided into 3 vertical windows. The first window is titled Create Profile. It has fields to fill in the name, description, platform, and profile type. Settings Configure option is selected to open the next window. A Create button is at the bottom. The second window is titled Device Restrictions Android. Cellular and Connectivity. 8 Settings Available option is selected to open the next window. Cellular and Connectivity Android. This window displays several options. Each option has 2 buttons, Block and Not Configured. OK button is present at the bottom right. Locking down Android connectivity methods with Intune. Note that most settings can be applied only to Samsung Knox-capable devices. Screenshot used with permission from Microsoft. Cellular/mobile data connections. Smartphones, tablets, and laptops use mobile data networks for data communication. Mobile data connections are unlikely to be subject to monitoring and filtering. Protecting cellular data connections requires implementing various controls on the endpoints to ensure the security and privacy of corporate data transmitted over cellular networks because mobile data communication effectively bypasses network protections implemented in the enterprise environment. Technologies that protect cellular data connections include user awareness and training, virtual private networks, VPN, mobile device management, MDM, mobile threat defense, and data loss prevention, DLP. Global Positioning System, GPS. A global positioning system, GPS, sensor triangulates the device position using signals from orbital GPS satellites. As this triangulation process can be slow, most smartphones use assisted GPS, AGPS, to obtain coordinates from the nearest cell tower and adjust for the device's position relative to the tower. A GPS uses cellular data. GPS satellites are operated by the U.S. government. Some GPS sensors can use signals from other satellites operated by the European Union, Galileo, Russia, GLONASS, or China, Beidou. GPS signals can be jammed or even spoofed using specialist radio equipment. This might be used to defeat geofencing mechanisms, for instance. Wi-Fi and tethering connection methods. Mobile devices usually default to using a Wi-Fi connection for data if present. If the user establishes a connection to a corporate network using strong WPA3 security, there is a fairly low risk of eavesdropping or on-path attacks. The risks from Wi-Fi come from users connecting to open access points or possibly a rogue access point imitating a corporate network. These allow the access point owner to launch any number of attacks, even potentially compromising sessions with secure servers, using a DNS spoofing attack, for instance. Personal Area Networks, PANs. Personal Area Networks, PANs, enable connectivity between a mobile device and peripherals. Ad hoc or peer-to-peer networks between mobile devices or between mobile devices and other computing devices can also be established. In terms of corporate security, these peer-to-peer functions should generally be disabled. It might be possible for an attacker to exploit a misconfigured device and obtain a bridged connection to the corporate network. Ad hoc Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi Direct. Wireless stations can establish peer-to-peer connections with one another rather than using an access point. This can also be called an ad hoc network, meaning that the network is not made permanently available. There is no established standards-based support for ad hoc networking, however. MITRE has a project to enable Android smartphones to configure themselves in an ad hoc network. MITRE.org/research/open-source-transfer/smartphone-ad-hoc-networking-span. Wi-Fi Direct allows one-to-one connections between stations, though in this case, one of the devices actually functions as a soft access point. Wi-Fi Direct depends on Wi-Fi Protected Setup, WPS, which has many vulnerabilities. Android supports operating as a Wi-Fi Direct AP, but iOS uses a proprietary multi-peer connectivity framework. You can connect an iOS device to another device running a Wi-Fi Direct Soft AP, however. There are also wireless mesh products from vendors such as Netgear and Google that allow all types of wireless devices to participate in a peer-to-peer network. These products might not be interoperable, though more now support the Easy Mesh standard, y-fi.org/discover-y-fi/y-fi-easymesh. Tethering and hotspots. A smartphone can share its internet connection with another device, such as a PC. Where this connection is shared over Wi-Fi with multiple other devices, the smartphone is described as a hotspot. The connection is shared by connecting the smartphone to a PC with a USB cable or with a single PC via Bluetooth, also referred to as tethering. However, the term Wi-Fi tethering is quite widely used to mean a hotspot. This type of functionality would typically be disabled when the device is connected to an enterprise network, as it could be used to circumvent security mechanisms such as data loss prevention or web content filtering policies. Bluetooth connection methods. Bluetooth is a radio-based wireless technology designed to implement short-range, personal area networking. Some security issues associated with Bluetooth include the following. Device discovery is when a device can be put into discoverable mode, meaning that it will connect to any other Bluetooth devices nearby. Unfortunately, even a device in non-discoverable mode can still be detected. Authentication and authorization is when devices authenticate, pair, using a simple passkey configured on both devices. This should always be changed to some secure phrase and never left as the default, such as 0000. Also, the device's pairing list should be regularly checked to confirm that the devices listed are valid. Malware is when there are proof-of-concept Bluetooth worms and application exploits, most notably the Blueborn exploit, armis.com/blueborn, which can compromise any active and unpatched system regardless of whether discovery is enabled and without requiring any user intervention. There are also vulnerabilities in the authentication schemes of many devices. Keep devices updated with the latest firmware. Description. The left pane has a home button followed by a search bar. Below the bar is a list of devices. The right pane is titled Bluetooth and Other Devices. A dialog box titled Pair Device reads, Pair Device ? The text below reads, does the pin on CompTIA A mobile match the pin below ? 998584. Two buttons, Yes and Cancel, are present at the bottom. Pairing a computer with a smartphone. Screenshot used with permission from Microsoft. Using a control center toggle may not actually turn off the Bluetooth radio on a mobile device. If there is any doubt about patch status or exposure to vulnerabilities, Bluetooth should be fully disabled through device settings. Unless device authentication is configured, a discoverable device is vulnerable to bluejacking, a sort of spam where someone sends you an unsolicited text or picture/video, message, or vCard, contact details. This can also be a vector for malware, as demonstrated by the bad Android Trojan malware, securelist.com/the-most-sophisticated-android-trojan/35929. Bluesnarfing refers to using an exploit in Bluetooth to steal information from someone else's phone. The exploit, now patched, allows attackers to circumvent the authentication mechanism. Even without an exploit, a short, 4-digit PIN code is vulnerable to brute force password guessing. Other significant risks come from the device being connected to another device. A peripheral device with malicious firmware can be used to launch highly effective attacks. This type of risk has a low likelihood, as demanding resources are required to craft such malicious peripherals. Bluetooth security features. Bluetooth incorporates several security features to ensure data and communication security. Feature.
Description.
Pairing and authentication. During pairing, devices exchange cryptographic keys to authenticate each other's identity and establish a secure communication channel. Pairing is accomplished using various methods, such as numeric comparison, passkey entry, or out-of-band OOB authentication. Bluetooth permissions. Bluetooth generally requires user consent or permission to connect and access specific services. Users can control which devices connect to their Bluetooth-enabled devices and manage permissions to prevent unauthorized access. Encryption. Bluetooth employs encryption algorithms to protect data transmitted between devices. Once pairing is complete, Bluetooth devices use a shared secret key to encrypt data packets. Bluetooth Secure Connections (BSC). Introduced in Bluetooth 4.0, BSC offers increased resistance against eavesdropping, on-path attacks, and unauthorized access. Bluetooth Low Energy (BLE) Privacy. BLE is a power-efficient version of Bluetooth that uses randomly generated device addresses that periodically change to prevent tracking and unauthorized identification of BLE devices. Near-field communications and mobile payment services. Near-field communication (NFC) is based on a particular type of radio frequency ID, RFID. NFC sensors and functionality are now commonly incorporated into smartphones. An NFC chip can also be used to read passive RFID tags at close range, configure other types of connections, pairing Bluetooth devices, for instance, and exchange information such as contact cards. An NFC transaction is sometimes known as a bump, named after an early mobile sharing app, later redeveloped as Android Beam, to use NFC. The typical use case is smart posters, where the user can tap the tag on a poster to open a linked web page via information coded in the tag. Attacks could be developed using vulnerabilities in handling the tag. Security Boulevard, com/2019/10/NFC-false-tag-vulnerability-ka-2019-9295. It is also possible to exploit NFC by crafting tags to direct the device browser to a malicious web page where the attacker could try to exploit vulnerabilities in the browser. NFC does not provide encryption, so eavesdropping and on-path attacks are possible if the attacker can find some way of intercepting the communication and the software services are not encrypting the data. The widest application of NFC is to make payments via contactless point-of-sale (POS) machines. To configure a payment service, the user enters their credit card information into a mobile wallet app on the device. The wallet app does not transmit the original credit card information, but a one-time token that is interpreted by the card merchant and linked back to the relevant customer account. There are three major mobile wallet apps: Apple Pay, Google Pay, formerly Android Pay, and Samsung Pay. Despite having a close physical proximity requirement, NFC is vulnerable to several types of attacks. Certain antenna configurations may be able to pick up the RF signals emitted by NFC from several feet away, allowing an attacker to eavesdrop from a more comfortable distance. An attacker with a reader may also be able to skim information from an NFC device in a crowded area, such as a busy train. An attacker may also be able to corrupt data as it is being transferred through a method similar to a DOS attack, by flooding the area with an excess of RF signals to interrupt the transfer. Skimming a credit or bank card will give the attacker the long card number and expiration date. Completing fraudulent transactions directly via NFC is much more difficult, as the attacker would have to use a valid merchant account and fraudulent transactions related to that account would be detected very quickly. You should be able to apply host hardening policies and technologies and to assess risks from third-party supply chains and embedded/IoT systems. Guidelines for implementing host security solutions. Follow these guidelines when you deploy or reassess endpoint security and integration with embedded or IoT systems. Establish configuration baselines for each host type. Ensure that hosts are deployed to the configuration baseline and set up monitoring to ensure compliance. Configure full disk encryption. Deploy an endpoint protection solution that meets security requirements for functions such as anti-malware, firewall, IDS, EDR, and DLP. Establish patch management procedures to test updates for different host groups and ensure management of both OS and third-party software. Create a management plan for any IoT devices used in the workplace. Assess security requirements for ICS and/or SCADA embedded systems. Procurement of secure embedded and IoT systems. Use of cryptographic controls for authentication, integrity, and resiliency. access control and segmentation for OT networks, vendor support for patch management, rate